Hello everyone and welcome to question 51. What do you think of audience interaction? Does it help or hinder? The context on this is huge. So, there's loads of different types of musical performances that one can do. Sort of the biggest ones I guess I could pull out of the bag is a classical concert, where I guess in a lot of cases audience interaction is frowned upon, not the cultural norm, however you want to phrase it really. But again, there are sometimes times in that concert where audience interaction is encouraged, but it's sort of limited to those times only and not other points in the concert. For example, even merely clapping between movements isn't a thing that you should do in classical music. Interestingly, once I did watch a performance of, he was a master's student at the time at my university, but he's now actually doing his PhD, and he'd composed this vocal set, this piece where divided into movements, and he was performing it, singing it himself with an accompanist on piano, and he even said, I don't mind if you clap between movements, it doesn't bother me. So he broke that sort of audience interaction, because sometimes you feel a bit tense in that, but he broke that, and then we all clapped between movements. So it was quite nice to stray away from the norm. But in pop music gigs, however you want to define popular music, audience interaction is what lets the performers know that they're actually doing a good job. You don't want to be playing at a pub gig and all of a sudden you're singing Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond, always the one that gets people singing. You don't want to be singing that and nobody joining in or even, tapping the foot. That means you're not doing great. Interestingly though, saying that, I have done some gigs, not many, but some gigs when we were in these COVID restrictions we've been having over here in the UK. One of them was last October, so October 2020. It was actually an Oktoberfest gig, which it was actually really fun. It was outdoors. However, because there was it was limited things going on, if you like, you couldn't get up and dance like you would, and you weren't allowed to shout, and you had to stay seated, and it was table service only, and all those sorts of things, which isn't our cultural norm at all. We do not follow those rules. If a band starts playing, the chances are you've got people on the dance floor, people interacting with the band during their breaks, or sometimes even during whilst they're playing, you get people coming up and singing along, sometimes if you're nice enough, and as long as they're not breaking any rules, particularly like being abusive or anything like that, then you're fine. But it's what let you know you're doing a good job if people are singing, dancing, tapping their foot. So we need that as musicians to thrive. Similar with lots of other gigs. It's not just pop gigs, but that's one I could pull out of the bag quick enough. If you're a busker, audience interaction can bring in more audience. So as long as it's obviously audience interaction really, I guess in the right way, positive interaction, that's a good way of just getting more audience in. New York Brass Band, I'm always shouting at the same people, but it's the people I know in my area and the people I can relate to best. They, a lot of the time, they're a street band, and they busk quite frequently in the York city centre where all the shops are and things. Now, if they get so many people stood around them and dancing, because that's the sort of music they provide, lots of other people then stop by and watch, and you end up then, I've been stood watching them until they break for the end of set. You just get sucked into their music, it's so good. So it brings in more audience, and then they get more money because people drop some money in the hat or whatever. With busking, you can also get bad interaction. There's sometimes bad people out there that are there. Another example of that was actually, again, COVID restrictions. There's a pianist, I've mentioned him in a previous video, who sort of moves his piano around. He doesn't just busk in York, he busks elsewhere, he gets, wedding gigs and things. And that is his job. And he started busking somewhere in the York Centre, and apparently that was against COVID restrictions because he was drawing an audience in, except the audience he had were actually all socially distanced, spaced out, outside, sat eating their lunch. They weren't actually doing anything wrong at all. They were just sat in, minding their own business outside for a start, you know. Whereas if you go down the road, there was people piled up in pubs, you know, and he got fined by the police for it. And actually what happened was there were people then getting involved going, he's not doing anything wrong. He pulled out his tax documents to say this is his job. You know, he can't work from home like everyone else was being told to. You know, he can't work from home. This is his job. He won't get paid if he works from home. He could play piano all he likes. He's not going to get any money. And he still got fined, but people were getting involved. There was videos of it, people saying he's not doing anything wrong. And that pulled in, actually, a larger audience by that point, which then I guess, in effect, was proving the police right in this case, annoyingly. But, you know, it still pulled people in. People were interested and wanted to hear him play more. And, yes. So, yeah, audience interaction. And sometimes it can be good as well. We've had performances that have actually... the performance has actually revolved around audience interaction. It can influence the performance. It's what makes contemporary music different every time it's performed, and things like that. Again, any more questions on this, I can answer them in a separate video. Comment below what your opinions are on audience interaction. I hope that helps. Cheers, bye.